The order of nature is really something, but yet when you're out in nature, it seems somewhat chaotic, right? Or it seems disordered because you don't really know what's going on. But by being out there longer, you start figuring it out and you putting things together. It also gets you into a place where you might even, have some boredom. And boredom kind of stimulates creativity as well, especially when you got a group of kids together.
What's the one premier event that brings the global attractions industry together? IAAPA Expo 2025, happening in Orlando, Florida, November 17th through the 21st.
From breakthrough technology to world-class networking and immersive education, IAAPA Expo 2025 is where you find possible.
And just for our audience, you'll save $10 when you register at iappa.org/IAAPA Expo and use promo code EXPO, APROS 10.
Don't miss it. We won't.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Hey, Josh, it's going fantastically. How are you?
Doing great. Question for you.
Yes, sir.
You've had a lot of experiences, right?
Like in life? Sure.
A really broad question. We're in the experience industry. You've experienced a lot of attractions and recreation and leisure in your life.
Sure. Let's narrow it down to attractions and leisure and recreation. Why not? Yes, absolutely.
Have you noticed a difference in your level of satisfaction or enjoyment when you are participating in an experience that you're in some degree of control over versus taking it in passively?
I would say almost unequivocally, yes, I would. And I was thinking about different experiences that I've had where I've had some control versus the ones where obviously you have very little control. And the first things that popped to mind, and I'm not sure why, were hiking in the woods and going to a museum, right? Now, you technically have control over your experience in both of those, but I would say a typical museum, obviously we've talked to a lot of people who are upping the ante and upping the game of the museum experience, but when you have static, text and, a caricature that's static, you can control your experience by walking to the next thing. Now, I may not read everything that's on that wonderfully designed, beautiful text board, so I may not get out of it everything that was intended, but I can still control that experience. But when I'm going for a hike in nature, and I think probably because of our guest today, this is what popped into my head. As you're moving, there's so much to see and do, and it, as our guest is going to say, it can look like chaos, but there is an order to it. And so, yeah, I think I get more out of being able to control my experience. If I was just standing there, either in nature or at a museum, I would feel trapped. And that's probably the last thing that we want our guests to feel. No matter what kind of facility you run, you don't want your guests to feel trapped.
Well said. Unless it's like an escape room. To an extent.
We cover all the bases here at Attraction Pros.
We do.
Yes, we do. Yes.
I'm thinking similarly as well, and the comparisons that I'm thinking of are a roller coaster and an alpine slide. Now, a roller coaster is a mostly passive experience, and I think everybody who listens to this podcast knows that you and I both love roller coasters, and to an extent was the reason why we are in this industry, even though with the exception of a small handful. I think we can say, generally speaking, you do not control your experience on the roller coaster. You could potentially try to choose your seat, which will determine the G-forces and the airtime, etc. But it's going where it's going. And I think actually maybe that's part of the thrill, is that you are relinquishing control. Maybe that's something, maybe that's another thing there. Okay.
That's another topic.
But recently, I was on vacation with my family in northern Michigan, where there was a mountain and there was an alpine slide at it. And I personally had never seen anything. I've never done like a mountain coaster or an alpine slide. But what was really cool about the toboggan is that there was a throttle that it would automatically activate the brakes, or it would basically be depressing on the brakes, however we would call it, unless you pushed it forward, which would then release it, and then you'd be able to experience some of the gravity. And I took my 4.5-year-old son on it, and we'd amped him up for it. Like, we got him really excited about it. He has not been on a roller coaster yet, and I thought that he was going to be terrified of this. Turned out what we were actually more concerned about was the chairlift ride, because he's never been on a chairlift before, but he did great on that. And then when we got to the top, we sat in the toboggan, and I said, okay, I'm going to control how fast it goes. And I figure, okay, we're just going to go really, really slow because he's a toddler. And I was able to control the speed and was able to gauge his reaction to how fast we were going and saying, is this too fast? No, faster. Turned out he wanted to go fast the whole time. So that means like 100%, like, he's my guy, right? Like no question. But I was able to kind of go back and forth and had more control over the experience. And I thought that was really fascinating and a great way, at least in this particular context, to introduce my son to what roller coasters will be like when he gets a little bit taller. Well, he's tall enough to ride some, but to be able to experience the larger thrills. And I thought it was a fascinating experience. And I was reminded of that from this interview that we have with Ron Romens, Ron is the president of Commercial Recreation Specialists, where they manufacture, they retail, and operate. They do. I don't think there's anything they don't do, in particular when it comes to outdoor recreation.
Absolutely. And I had the pleasure of speaking at their company meeting earlier this year, and that's really where I met Ron and got more familiar with what they do. One of our previous guests, Jen Rice, runs the Woe Zone, and that's an operation under the CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialist heading. And one of the big things that Ron talks about here was unstructured play. And I know you've had some examples of this with your children, but when you put a child in an environment where they have to kind of make things up, they're not in front of a screen, they're not structured in terms of somebody telling them what to do, a lot of times that's where creativity comes from. A lot of times that's where inventiveness comes from. And, turning over rocks and putting your feet in the sand and all those different things will inspire you to do things a little differently. And he is big on that. So everything that CRS does really has that as a backdrop of how do we get people to come together to inspire the human spirit through this unstructured ability to recreate and play and discover and all the things that you do when you're recreating outdoors.
We also touch on the topic of boredom in a very positive way. We usually think of boredom as being a negative thing, but Ron talks about how boredom stimulates creativity. Now, Ron's an inventor, and so this was tied perfectly into his inventive process of the boredom really activates your brain, requires you to think, requires you to maybe tinker a little bit and say, what if, and be able to kind of observe and then ideate and then iterate and then see what you come from that. And I think throughout all these topics right here that we covered in this interview, the one common theme of all of this was nature. I mean, we talked about being outdoors. We talked about the lakes and the ponds, and talked about the rivers and the mountains. I mean, this is a very nature-based episode.
So should we have recorded this outside? The two of us, we should have been outside while we're recording this in nature. But since we didn't, should we head out to nature and get to this interview with Ron Romens?
I think I should at least go for a walk for some fresh air after this.
Well, hello, Ron. Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. How you doing today?
I'm great, Matt. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So excited for this conversation. Can we first start off and talk a little bit about your career and what it is that you do now?
Well, we can. It kind of got to where I am in kind of a lot of twists and turns and curves, and through a lot of different experiences. But I've been an inventor, a founder, a concession operator, business owner, an investor. And prior to some of those things, I've been a welder and a butcher and a truck driver and a salesperson. And, so I took kind of an odd path a little bit where, I'm from a family of 9 and we all got luggage for high school graduation. So decided to go out and didn't really do the college plan, but was more of an experiential learner along the way. And got into the recreation business about 30 years ago. Actually, probably about 35 years ago now. But I've been a founder of RAVE Sports. We started that company back in 1997. We invented the first floating trampoline. And, prior to that was I had a company that we created an electric boat that we leased to resort hotels. About 250 resort hotels, we put boats out at. I left RAVE and started commercial recreation specialist in 1999. I was the vice president of commercial markets at RAVE. And, when I was there, we were a manufacturer. We had come up with this great new idea in recreation. And I had been working in the commercial recreation market with these electric boats, kind of all through the Caribbean, Hawaii, Bermuda. And so I was really kind of seeing how people were interacting with this type of products. So I left RAVE, and my background is more sales and marketing and solving problems. But through that, I was able to start several water sport concessions in the Caribbean, along with starting commercial recreation specialist. In that, then, we worked with a number of manufacturers. Aqua is another brand. We created several of their new products for them. And then several years later, we also opened up the WOZone concessions. These are concessions that we own and operate through public-private partnerships with state parks or cities, where we put out these big floating aqua parks and basically activate public beaches for the summer, from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Also owned a campground, bought and owned and run a campground. So we work a lot in those markets. So really, it's been kind of an experiential, you're kind of learning through experience career, right? Taking all those bits and pieces, that you learn along the way and applying them to the next, adventure, I guess. And so now so commercial recreation specialist, the company that we have now here, we just celebrated our 25th year last year in business. We've got about 60 people. We're up in Verona, Wisconsin, and we're providing recreation solutions both regionally and nationally in a lot of different categories. So it's been a fun journey.
That is really fascinating and just so wide ranging. I feel like there's a lot to just unpack with your personal background and your story. And I do want to touch on that a little bit. And I'm curious, I would say your leap into entrepreneurship and curious kind of maybe those early days or what that was like of just you've got this background in sales and then really turning it into a company of your own.
It was pretty interesting. I look back at it and, you kind of say, gee, how did I do that? Or how do we do that? Right. And, I mentioned I got out of high school and just went to work. and didn't really go to college. And I think that might have been to my benefit, because back then at the time, I kind of operated on energy and faith, and it kind of had the attitude that I can figure it out, and so, I came across several opportunities in this recreation market with some new inventions, some inventors that I met, and I was 26 years old, and I'm like, sure, we can do this. I can do that. So why not? Got into it, got down the road a little bit, and it's like, oh crap, what I get into? Okay, now we've got to figure out how to get through it, right? And so I guess necessity is the mother of invention. And I was very fortunate to have some very good mentors that I met along the way. I was involved in, Christian Businessmen Committee and, some groups like that of other more seasoned business individuals that really were great character. And they took me under their wing a little bit, and I'm pretty good at taking a little bit here and a little bit there and kind of making it my own, right? So learning through those experiences. But quite frankly, I've always been kind of an attitude that, yeah, we can do this, we can get this done, right? And so it was that kind of attitude that kind of brought out new products, new invention, developed things in different ways. Took a little bit different perspective on recreation and how people play and recreate. So, everything from being a farmer to welding to, a diesel mechanic to being all of that stuff, in those early years, you just got to figure it out with those kind of jobs. And I took that kind of attitude to marketing, business, and those type of things. And then I also learned that I needed to really associate myself with a lot smarter people than myself, which was a big help. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Ron, I'm wondering, there's a lot to dive into, like Josh said, but I'm wondering if we can kind of dive into the inventor part, because there's very few people who I find are brave enough to call themselves an inventor. We think we come up with something new and then realize that, somebody else has come up with something, so I'm curious, is that something that goes back like to your childhood? Were you always like tinkering with things and trying to build things and grow things that way, and then it kind of grew organically out of that? I'm just curious kind of where that inventor mind comes from.
I think a lot of it does go back to childhood, Matt. We grew up in a rural area in Iowa, and a small town, and I can remember in 5th and 6th grade taking our bikes out to the local trout stream and just spending 2-3 days out there, at a time, sleeping under the stars, swinging off the rope swing, turning over rocks, catching crawdads, just figuring things out. Little League, after Little League was over, I can remember we would take our bikes and we would do demolition derbies around first, second, and third base on each other's bikes. Then we'd go back to we'd walk them back home and fix them and go do it again the next day. So it was just a lot of creative play and a lot of learning going on there. And that is, that kind of, those kind of experiences kind of draw new ways to play. They kind of draw out new inventions, if you will. So I always been kind of, inquisitive, wanted to figure things out, always kind of willing to push the limit a little bit, maybe too much sometimes. But so all those things, kind of tie into the invention. And I think along the way, very seldom is it myself coming up with just this and with an idea. Usually it's an idea spawned between a group of people, and we start kicking it around, and then it's developing it and honing it to this product, like a floating trampoline, that when that product, nobody had seen it before, and I call it an aha product. You see it and it's on the water, there's people jumping on it, and you go, oh, I get it. That would be cool. It's like the light bulb goes off, right? So kind of the invention there was taking that and creating attachments off of it so you could link it together and create a floating playground. So it's seeing the playground, seeing how people play, and applying that over into this other category. So it's crossing these things over, kind of taking the ingredients and using them in a new way that creates different outcomes. And, people recreate with it differently.
Really fascinating. And just by the way that you describe that, I'm kind of connecting some dots right here. Is you talk about the time that you spent outdoors in nature of just for
Yeah.
2 to 3 days at a time, but that being part of the process of inventing, of whether is it disconnecting, is it being fully present with something? I wonder really where the connection there is, the kind of the sort of like bringing this now to the connection with nature and the outdoors.
Yeah, the nature part, I mean, the nature part is a big part for me. And I think it's nature is an interesting way. I mean, the order of nature is really something, but yet when you're out in nature, it seems somewhat chaotic, right? Or it seems disordered because you don't really know what's going on. But by being out there longer, you start figuring it out and you putting things together. It also gets you into a place where you might even, have some boredom, and boredom kind of stimulates creativity as well, especially when you got a group of kids together. When to me, I think unstructured play, I don't think there's near enough of it nowadays. Everything we have is very structured. So with some of the things, we might get into what we do with, open water, back to nature, active recreation. It puts grass and sand between people's toes, and they recreate just a whole lot. They relax a whole lot more many times than chlorine and concrete. It's this unstructured environment. I mean, give kids a bucket, a shovel, and a pile of sand and some water. And I got 5 kids. They'll be there forever on that beach, and they're just doing their thing. They're creating new games. So being in nature stimulates that creativity. So I think there was a lot of that from when I grew up, and it crosses over. And I take that with, me now as an adult and a grandfather and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, it's pretty fun. Nature's a big part.
Absolutely. It's funny. I was just telling Josh on a previous episode how when I was like 7 or 8 years old, I asked my parents for a pile of dirt so that I could play my cars with it and stuff like that. And it was the greatest present they ever gave me. But I'm curious if we can kind of go back also and talk a little bit about commercial recreation specialists and how you get people out in nature and provide those opportunities to recreate, and some of the products that people might see but not know that it came from you, or it's a company that you represent.
Right. So I'm gonna kind of talk maybe a little about how I got to commercial recreation specialist, and that can kind of launch into what we're currently doing. But when I was with RAVE Sports and we started that company, we were a manufacturer. And the thing is, as a manufacturer, the goal of the manufacturer is to manufacture product and sell product, right? We got to keep the production line going. So if you had a problem, I had the solution. It was a floating trampoline. It just happened to be that's all we had was a floating trampoline. My background was working with concessions and hotels with these rental boats and being out in the fields. So I knew all of these folks. And I knew that they needed so many more solutions for their business to help their business be successful. But all I had was this floating trampoline. So I left and started commercial recreation specialist with the idea that we want to provide recreation solutions. And one of the mentors I had, he would always say, Ron, you're going to be successful by figuring out how to help other people be successful. So basically we started with, we want to provide recreation solutions, and recreation solutions that help an owner, a concessionaire, a resort be successful with their business, right? So we started out by representing these water products, really focusing on open water, active recreation, these floating trampolines. And now we see Wibbit and Aquaglide and all these big parks. So, it's become more of a category, right? Not just a product. So we had a lot of background in that and in commercial water sports. I had a parasail company and a wave runner company down in St. Thomas. So we started with those products on a national basis. And then we said, we have to find ways that make a difference, that add value. So we got into splash pads. We were back in 2000. We started working with Vortex Aquatic Structures, introducing splash pads into the Midwest region, and back then nobody even knew what a splash pad was, right? But we thought, we saw the connection with water, people playing with water, how it developed play with kids. So we started to understand and work with Vortex in introducing splash pads. And then we also found several other key products that we felt created a very unique value proposition that could leverage our experience and our skills, in this kind of open water, back to nature recreation, using water and such. So now over the years, that's where we started with this group of products, but now we handle about 70 different product lines, shade structures and shelters and splash pads and aquatic features and furniture, always looking to partner with top brands, top tier brands. We do a lot of trade shows where we're exhibiting, and we do it in a lot of very different markets: summer camps, campgrounds, amusements, attractions, municipalities. And we're always looking what's new in this market that we can take and apply to another market, right? So I kind of look at it as we're finding best of class equipment that we know works well for specific outcomes. And our job is to basically get the right ingredients together that is going to help this owner be successful for what he's trying to do with his guests, to create the experience for his guests. So we've kind of had that philosophy over the years, and we've always looking to help them be successful, kind of a servant mentality, as to how are we going to help them be successful. And if we can help them figure that out, they keep coming back year over year over year. So it's, I tell owners often, I said, I'm not too concerned about selling you a product. I'm more concerned about creating a customer, and it seems to have worked. We have a very high number of repeat clients, and they tend to build. We talk to them about their recreation plan, what their goals are, what they would like to, if they're going to make the investment, what do they hope to get out of it? What that investment, how will they get a return on that? What their goal is. And so it's a lot of listening and a lot of asking questions on the front end, and then it's creating solutions in a little bit maybe of a unique manner that helps them create an experience that's a little bit different than their competition, or kind of unique.
Ron, can you tell us a little bit more of what that recreation plan, or really what those conversations look like, and trying to maybe help the client understand what their recreation plan is and what their goals are? And throughout those conversations, does it change as you start to kind of do those fact-finding questions, that now they realize that the plan actually needs to be a little bit different? I'm curious if we can come back and sort of look at maybe what those conversations look like.
It does. The conversation, we really try to really try to have the conversation, number one, who are they serving? Who is their client? What are they trying to sell? Who are they trying to sell it to, right? Is it a summer camp? If it's a summer camp, is it a day camp or an overnight camp? Is it private or is it, faith-based? Is it, so who are they and who do they want to be? Who do they see themselves as, right? And then, ask them a little bit about, if it's a campground, who are they serving? Is it families? Is it overnight guests? Is it, the winter group, from Canada to Arizona? If it's an amusement park, who are they serving? What's their uniques? Talk to them about some of that stuff with some fact-finding, discovery questions, I guess. Where do they see that they have a need? And they may be calling us for one particular item that they've seen, and they say, hey, I need one of these. And usually we kind of back it up a little bit. I understand you think you need one of these or you'd like one of these. Happy to help you with that. But can we back up? Can you tell me a little bit about your business, how you got here and why you think you need this? And if you need it, what do you hope to get out of it? And that typically starts to open up a little bit of a conversation about, that's for this year. Is it a capital expense? Is it just that tends to open up the conversation about kind of how they see this type of stuff fitting into their business. And then, we ask a little bit about what else they have going on and, and how are they going to use this piece of equipment? Are they going to monetize it? Is it going to be just is it just going to be an amenity? Is it going to be a programming tool? What do they want to get out of it? So that just kind of starts to kind of open that conversation and get them talking about their business a little bit. And then you can start talking about what they'd like to see, goals and objectives, where they hope to take this business. But usually we try to help them get kind of a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year recreation plan. And if they're going to be investing into this equipment, how are they going to measure it? What they want to get out of it? Do they have a measurement indice? What I found over the years, just kind of from working in the business, is most recreation is used in one of three ways. You could take this floating trampoline product and a summer camp uses it as a programming tool. They're doing all kinds of games and, experiential education and team building with it. A resort in northern Wisconsin might use it just as an amenity. They're going to put it out on their beach to have something to one up their competition. And you get it as part of your stay. It's just a fun thing to have for guests. A group like Royal Caribbean, they put 7, 8 things together. They put it out on the water and they charge for it. And they use it to monetize it, right? So it's a programming tool, it's an amenity, or it's a monetization, right? So you start talking in those ways about how you would like to use it, what you'd like to get out of it. If you want to monetize it, if that's your goal, to create an experience and be able to, charge for it, how do you put those pieces together and how much do you need to be able to do that? And what does that model look like? So it's a lot of discovery questions of trying to understand, kind of where they want to take it, as opposed to, like I say, just selling a product.
Well, and I would think, Ron, too, the concept of going from concept to completion is also a big part of that discovery process, because when you say, what are you looking for? What can you do? Oh, we can do that, or we can do that. We can provide you all those different services on your 1, 3, and 5 year plan, because we can take you from your idea now to completion and have it, working in your facility.
Right. Yeah. We, as the business grew over the years, we found our clients asking us to help with, we started to create lakes, designing open bodies of water, 3, 4, 5 acre lakes that we would put a beach around it and you would build this open body of water, a lot like the lagoons that they're doing in Florida and down in Texas and such. But that lake is designed, every bit of it, with intention and purpose, right? We kind of started up here in Wisconsin with some of the campground owners. They had ponds and they wanted to convert their ponds into the old swimming hole, put some toys out there, have the beach, and make all this happen. When that started, 15 years ago, they were like, well, can you design this for us? Can you help us with this? We would, bring in landscape architects, civil engineers, and do all this. Well, we kind of evolved and kind of grew organically, where we brought on our own design studio and our own landscape architects that kind of specialize in this type of recreation. How to create a lake, a pond, an open body of water to be used specifically for recreation, where you have deep water zones, shallow water zones, active zones, passive zones. You're creating a destination, and you're creating an environment. So we kind of grew over the years of the products and services that we offered kind of organically based on what clients were asking, and also as this category grew. So our job is to kind of curate the products that are in the market and put them together so they're working together to create the experience for the different demographics, the different folks that they're serving based on how they're trying to serve their customer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you talk about kind of the way that they're asking for things, that's evolved a little bit over time. And I'm curious, as far as just what you have seen in terms of trends or changes in how people experience outdoor recreation.
Yeah, it's really really interesting. And so I remember back, you guys probably do too, back in like 2007, 2008, there was some downturns, and kind of, we've been going to IAPA for, I don't know, 25, 30 years, right? With RAVE Sports, and then with CRS every year, as a booth there, as an exhibitor. And what I noticed in the recreation market was, back in the early 2000s, things were very themed, and the rides and the market was, people were sitting and the experience was happening. You were coming into this theme and it was taking you through it. And kind of what I saw kind of evolving is that, in 2008 or so, we kind of had this economic downturn. And I can remember that, prior to that, there was parks and stuff putting in really large roller coasters, and it was really focused on really big stuff. And this 2008 downturn came, and the capital projects kind of got shut down. And some of the theme parks, the guys said, well, look, we got to figure out how to do more with a little bit less. And then we started seeing some of the high rope challenge courses and the zip lines coming through, right? So now all of a sudden they could put a zip line in for $500,000 and cycle, hundreds and hundreds of people. And it was an experience that people were somewhat starting to control themselves. And there was a lot of experiential learning. You could go through it with your family as a group, and you could build community, right? And all of a sudden that started to kind of catch on, well, we were kind of working in that water side of things, in open water, back to nature, this active recreation. What we saw is a huge amount of water parks, and we love water parks. We sell the water parks all the time. It's a great experience, but we saw people wanting to get back out in nature, to be able to control their experience, have the opportunity not to sit in something that's themed and be taken through it, but be in the experience and be part of the experience, and to be able to do that experience with others, especially with an entire family, where you can go through it together. So I've seen it from more of an individual kind of experience, where the market has been back in the early 2000s, late 90s, to now it seems like more of a experience that people could control the direction, the intensity, and if they want to go through it with someone or if they want to do it themselves. People want to have a little bit more control of their own experience now, it seems. So that's just my take on it from watching folks.
To your point earlier, you can go to an amusement park, and I love amusement parks, obviously, but there is a lot of concrete there and things, and then so you're outside, but it's very different from being in nature and being outside. And that's one of the things that I'm so glad we've been able to talk a little bit about here today. And I'm wondering if we can go a little bit deeper into the mission of CRS, which is to inspire the human spirit through recreation. I think that's such a cool phrase and a cool thing to be able to aspire to. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit more about that specifically within the organization.
Yeah, so that was kind of one of our missions at the very beginning with CRS, is to, kind of a servant mentality, inspire the human spirit, create something that inspires people, right? What I saw early on with this, back to nature recreation with these big floating aqua parks with different things that we're doing out in open water, it creates a canvas for really free and open play. It's a very dynamic environment that's always changing, and it's unscripted. So, within the organization, we're always trying to come up with things that, is going to inspire someone as they're doing it. I'll give you an example on our aqua parks at the WO zone. We first opened up these WO zones. We put this big aqua park on Lake Michigan, south of Chicago. And one Saturday I was there, and there's this group of like over 40 people, and their ages from 60 some years old all the way down to like 8 years old. And all of them get a ticket, and they all go out, and there's 2 of them on the shoreline. And I went over and chatted with them, and it was a grandma and grandpa, and they all had come from 3 states to celebrate a 40th birthday for one of their sons. So here they came from 3 states, and they all came to this beach in Walhalla, Indiana, to go out on this big floating trampoline. So I've got 5 kids, and the only thing that we could do together as a family with 5 kids, and they weren't fighting, was downhill skiing or tubing behind the boat. That was it. But so this type of an aqua park thing, this type of an event, from the 8-year-old to the 60-year-old can go out on this and run around this on-water challenge course, up and over these obstacles and through these courses, challenging each other, laughing together, and creating this memory and this experience. The grandparents were just like, I can't thank you enough for being here. They were just like, wow. The kids came off, they had a 3 generation picture there, of everybody with this in the background, and this day, this experience that they were all able to go through this together, right? So that's the kind of the inspiration that, this type of recreation can do for people. So as an organization, we're trying to come up with this combination of products, both existing products that are tried and true and tested, as well as new products, and putting them together, curating them in a unique way to create an experience that is different than they'll get at a water park or an amusement park. A water park and an amusement park they're great. That's a great experience too, but they're quite static. You go up the steps and you go down the slide, you go up the steps and you go down the slide. And, that's why we add a lot of new rides each year to add, new life and new things. When you're recreating in nature, it's very dynamic. The number of people you have, the weather, the wind, the water, the temperature. It's like downhill skiing, Each day you go out on that hill is a little different if you had snow the night before or if it's icy or whatever it is. So it's always this something new. And that pushes people, it inspires people. So I think that does a lot for the human spirit, that type of recreation.
And creates that that repeatability, which is, yes, it's good for business, but I think to the broader point, it's good for just, like I said, inspiring the human spirit. And the story that you shared of just really bringing that family together, that they could go to any public beach and they could have a good time on any beach, but
Right.
was able to really take it to another level and really create a more
Josh, that's exactly right. And it is something so unique when they get out there and do that experience. It does take it to this next level for that day. It builds a different type of memory.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ron, we still have a few minutes left here, but maybe starting to wind down in the interview. And I feel like this time has just been flying by in this just amazing conversation. But we are curious, how do you like to spend time outdoors these days?
Usually when I'm outdoors, I'm looking at how people are recreating, right? One of the things I like to do is just go to the park or go to either an amusement park, water park, or just the city park, a well-designed park, and sit and just watch people and just see how the different demographics interact, the different ages, how they interact within that space, how they play, how people play. So that's I'll do that a lot of times, just go take my lunch break and go and do that. But I mean, I love to get out and fish, and we camp and hunt and snowmobile and a cabin up north and get on the lake. And so just like to get out, biking, all those types of outdoor things we like to do. And just like to spend time outside. Yeah.
Yeah, advancing the human spirit all the time, right?
But that's the goal.
Yeah,
That's the goal.
Well, Ron, just like Josh said, this has been an amazing conversation. The time has flown by so quickly. If there's someplace that people could go to learn more about CRS or get in touch with you directly, where would you send them?
Yeah, they can go to our website at crs4rec.com. Or they can give us a call, 877-896-8442. Or if they're in industry, we're at about 27 trade shows this year, from IAPA to American Camp Association, Christian Camp, the RV Park and Campground shows. So we're out there and about. So look us up. We would love to chat with you about your recreation plans and how we might be able to add some value. And if we can't add value, we'll try to steer you to somebody who can.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, Ron, I just want to say again, just to thank you so much for being here with us today. This was such a fascinating conversation. We really appreciate your time. And for everyone out there who is watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.